Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Prime Minister Modi last evening spoke to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian after 13 days, only when the economic crisis in India and elsewhere is worsening. Now, India was late in signing the condolence book as well after Khamenei was killed. Then Mujtaba Khamenei, through his statements and tweets, has very categorically indicated that the war is not ending anytime soon. Rather, he will go in for more aggressive strikes and compensation for the losses. This is what Mujtaba Khamenei had tweeted last evening. I'll show you the tweets in some time, but the biggest question we are asking is that will India be able to reset its ties with Iran and other Gulf nations amidst this brewing West Asia crisis? We must not forget that the Strait of Hormuz is one of the biggest lifelines, not only for India, but for 130 countries around the world. So, can India really play a pivotal role in tiding away this economic crisis as well? Can it recalibrate its ties with Iran and the Arab world? But before I start the discussion, I would like to show you the tweet which was put out by Mujtaba Khamenei, and this was immediately after Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Pezeshkian. Now, this was the one tweet, 11:36 p.m. last night. He tweeted that to leaders in certain regional countries, we share borders with 15 countries and have always wanted and still want warm relations with them. But for years, the enemy has been establishing military and financial bases in some of these countries to secure its dominance over the region. This was one tweet. And at a very short interval, there was another tweet which was put out by Mujtaba Khamenei. Let's play that as well, where he talks about the compensation. Shravan, if you're there backstage and if we can have that tweet. In that particular tweet, I don't know, there's some issue with the play out. Okay, so in that particular tweet, he basically talks about compensation, that he will seek compensation for all the losses. And then he goes on to say that if the compensation is not made, then there will be aggressive strikes, which will be proportionate to all the losses which have been incurred by Iran. So the big question we are asking again, of course, is India trying to recalibrate its ties with Iran? Joining me this evening is Sanjay Kapoor, international affairs expert and veteran journalist. Thank you so much for joining. We have K.S. Dakshinamurthy, international affairs expert and consulting editor to TheFederal. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And Professor Aftab Kamal Pasha, international affairs expert and diplomat, also joins us. I think there's some problem with his frame. Professor Pasha, if you can hear me and if you can just adjust your frame slightly, because I can't see you in the picture. But I'll begin with Sanjay. Yeah, I think he'll reconnect, so we'll add him then. Sanjay, to begin with you, is India trying to some sort of, in some way or the other, trying to recalibrate its ties? And is it not very late now? Will India be able to do that?
I'm not very sure what will be the outcome because both India and Iran present two different point of views. India has not been critical of the attack on Iran from US and Israel. They have kept quiet all this while. In fact, there's been no condemnation of the manner in which the supreme leader was killed. Although India till very recently had very close ties with Iran, we were actually running the Chabahar port in the Gulf of Oman, and we had very good relations with them. And suddenly, at the behest of the Americans, we have decided to just jettison them from our scheme of things. So, but what will be the outcome of him calling up President of Iran, or for that matter, what Mr. Jaishankar will make out of calling his counterpart from Iran? I think precious little, primarily because they speak in two different languages. If you see the readout coming out from the foreign minister of Iran about the conversation that he had with Jaishankar, they seem to be on two different planets, saying different things entirely. Whereas the foreign minister is saying about the atrocities that have been committed, the violence, the horrendous, activities of the Americans and Israelis. You have nothing of that kind shared by our Indian counterpart. Similarly, I am not sure whether the even there's no mention of the Strait of Hormuz and what India is asking for, and that happened on that side. But when it came to the president of Iran, similarly, I think the mood suggests that India spoke about Strait of Hormuz and how 38 Indian ships are stuck and why they should be released now. I'm not sure because that is coming from the other side. It says that India may not be given a free pass. And if you've gone through this tweet which has been put out by Moshtaba Khamenei, he says it very categorically that the enemies of Iran have set up bases in friendly countries. So it's a matter of interpretation, but surely that charge can be leveled against India also. And there are still a lot of speculation about why did the Prime Minister actually go to Israel just 2 days before the war began, and what was the outcome. So there are too many irons in the fire, and we have no idea where it is all going and what it really means.
Okay, we'll try and get the tweet of Prime Minister Modi after talking to President Pezeshkian. What did Prime Minister Modi tweet? And I'll also try and play out the second tweet of Mujtaba Khamenei. Let's have Prime Minister Modi's tweet just to get an idea as to what has been said after he spoke to President Pezeshkian. Shravan, if you're there backstage, and if you can play Prime Minister Modi's tweet, which very categorically says, here it is, had a conversation with Iranian President Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian to discuss the serious situation in the region, expressed deep concern over the escalation of tensions and the loss of civilian lives as well as damage to civilian infrastructure. The safety and security of Indian nationals, along with the need for unhindered transit of goods and energy, remain India's top priorities, reiterated India's commitment to peace and stability, and urged for dialogue and diplomacy. Now, this is a tweet which was put out around 11:09, so I'm presuming that 5 minutes or 10 minutes here and there, he must have made a phone call to President Pezeshkian. But this is the second tweet I was talking about of Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei. This is 11:28 p.m. And the other tweet of Mujtaba Khamenei, which I played out, was tweeted at 11:36. So this is the first tweet, which is there on the screen. In any case, we will obtain compensation from the enemy. If they refuse, we will take it from their assets to the extent we deem appropriate. If that wasn't possible, we will destroy an equivalent amount of their assets. Now, coming to Professor Pasha, the whole question is that given the fact that India was seen closer to America, Israel, now is this an opportunity which India really can use to reset its ties with Iran, all what has gone wrong so far? Now, is this an opportune moment for India to reset everything in a new direction?
Yes, thank you, Nilu. I initially thought it should have come a little early, but better late than never. Because in diplomacy, in dialogue, and international politics, although we have been late in condoling the death of Ali Khamenei and the Iranian sailors who lost their lives near Sri Lanka, and on many other issues. But I still believe that we have not lost the opportunity to repair our ties with Iran because there are two reasons. One is our close proximity with Netanyahu, which was too obvious for any observer. And Iran closely watches the Indo-Israeli relations, growing cooperation, not only bilaterally, but also in the region, so on and so forth, and also through Israel, the United States. This trilateral alliance uh, is too obvious, and two of these countries have attacked, unprovoked attack on Iran, and Prime Minister's tweet doesn't mention the attack on Iran uh, and the negotiations, dialogue, diplomacy which Iran has conducted throughout. And secondly, the civilian lives, he doesn't mention even one sentence for Ali Khamenei or the soldiers, which was a golden opportunity to retrieve our situation. Nevertheless, I feel that India has a fairly good chance to balance its relations with all of these actors, US, Israel, Iran, and India, because As I've been saying, eventually the United States needs India to contain in the long run China. Likewise, Iran needs India for a better opening in the East. They have not closed the options. They have not shut the doors. They are still willing to export gas, oil, trade, and as a link through Chabahar to Central Asia. So I believe that there is a window of opportunity for India to act as a balancer, because we are tilted lately with UAE and the GCC states in the region, but with new dynamics in the Gulf between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Turkey and uh, the Qataris and Pakistan. So in that way, we have to evolve and you know change according to the situation. We have put too many eggs in the baskets of the Sunni monarchic regimes, which we are now witnessing are facing turmoil and upheaval. Look at the scenes in Bahrain. People are on the streets to calling for the overthrow of the Khalifa exactly 15 years ago, which happened at the Pearl Square during the Arab Spring. So all is not lost, according to me, but the dynamism and the kind of activism which world was expecting, the damage control after Prime Minister visit to Israel, that we have not shown. But nevertheless, you see, as the war drags on, if America insists, Israel insists on regime change and complete carpet bombing, although they are on their back foot and they are looking for a way out. But you see, there is a major coup which has happened in Iran, and that is the transfer of power from the liberals and moderates and other clerics who were willing to give negotiations, dialogue, rapprochement with the West a chance to ease the economic and other situation. But now, with Mustafa Khamenei being virtually placed by the IRGC on the high pedestal, uh, it has taken a new shape. Earlier, it was action reaction from Iran. Now they
Yes.
have gone on the offensive. They are coordinating with Hezbollah. They are talking about closing Bab al Mandab for the first time, which was the exclusive privilege of the Houthis. So the tweet from Mustafa, the earlier one, speaks about mostly the Gulf states where America had stationed its troops and bases and financial centers. But it is a hint to India, because we are not very far from the region, and which he mentions in the first sentence. But the word compensation is very important,
Hmm.
because they have the levers now, and that is the Strait of Hormuz, which they have virtually closed, although not officially. But
Hmm.
Indian ships are stranded. Our oil and gas is stuck. Our uh, exports are stuck. So, in that way, it is a message that looks we are still open uh,
Hmm.
for dialogue and rapprochement. And
Yes.
we should seize the opportunity and not
Right.
be completely under the pressure of the US and Israel and
Israel.
the
Right.
West.
Okay, so this Strait of Hormuz, of course, is the biggest pipeline or pipeline, if one may say, and all the countries are banding around this Strait of Hormuz because it's the biggest choke point. All the ships, all the cargo, everything is stuck there, and it's leading to a huge, huge oil and gas crisis. The election coming to you, and as what Professor Pasha was saying, that this is an opportunity which India can seize upon. Uh, and if India has begun to do that, because what we saw Vikram Misri going and signing the condolence book after Khamenei was killed, even though it was late, then we've seen Iris Dana was sunk by the US submarine. At that time, also allegations were made that India probably did not inform Iran or it had the intelligence. We do not know many details about that. But yes, the second ship, India did provide the dock in South India. And now that Prime Minister Modi has made a phone call to Iran, and people say that it is because of the compulsions behind the worsening crisis back home. But even then, this opportunity, if at all India is seizing upon this opportunity to recalibrate its equations with Iran, do you think Iran will respond in a positive manner for India, given our old civilizational and strategic ties?
See, there are two ways of looking at it. One is theoretically what India can do. See, so potentially the field is open for India to take a proactive role, because right now, as we speak, we don't see any country really coming up there and trying to
Yes.
negotiate for peace. Though, of course, countries are asking for it. To the countries which are affected by this bombing, Iran's bombing in the Gulf region, are asking for some kind of negotiation to happen and to de-escalate. There is pressure within the United States on Trump to de-escalate. So there is pressure coming from various sides, but really nobody has formally taken up the task of mediating negotiated settlement in the conflict. So the field is wide open for India. So theoretically, India can play a role because India is a historical relationship with Iran, and right now it's also close to the US and Israel. And so, I mean, though of course India has rubbed Iran apparently on the wrong side, there is still there is depth in the relationship, so it can be overlooked if India honestly makes an attempt. But if you look at the reality of it, so this I'm saying theoretically, but in reality, if you look at the Indian response, it's been very sluggish. And India, if you take a different crisis around the world, in which either it is affected or not affected, India takes a very generalistic position. I mean, asking for peace and tranquility, asking for negotiated settlement. In very general terms. So, for instance, it has not taken a position on whether it was appropriate for US and
Yes.
Israel to attack Iran. And it should
Yes.
have done that. And then, secondly, when Ali Khamenei was assassinated, it didn't require 5 days for India to react. So, India is either caught in a kind of a dilemma. The Foreign Office, the government, they really are not sure how to react to the situation. So it ends up looking really negatively. It's a very sluggish kind of a response. So
No,
that being
but,
the
Dixon, if I may ask you that this generalist approach you are talking about, if India is really wanting the ties to get back to their original form as far as Iran is concerned, and as far as other countries are also concerned, do you think this generalist approach is actually going to prove as a demonstrable expression by India? Or do we need to really now pinpoint and say that, look, this is how we stand by Iran, and India needs to do that? Yes,
Yeah.
Akshay.
So let's look at the timeline. So Prime Minister Modi went to Israel 2 days before before Iran was attacked. So, and then once the attack started against Iran, obviously Iran is preoccupied with the immediate situation as far as its own country is concerned. And then you have these allied issues that happened about the ship being torpedoed by the US, the sailors getting killed, all that, plus India's lack of response. It's little premature right now for Iran to concretize its response to India. I
Yeah.
think we need time. I think the conflict has to end, and we will know the repercussions of this if there is any only in the coming months, or it's going to be a little slow. I don't think it's so quickly we'll get to know what Iran is thinking about India right now as we speak.
Right, right. That's a significant point, that it's not going to be very easy for India, and apparently, and that's perhaps what everyone is assuming, that India apparently will have to do a lot of walking the talk, as one may say. Sanjay, do you think that India really can have some demonstrable action on the plate before Iran? Because it will have to, after all, convince Iran that, look, we haven't changed, even though we are trying to balance out things with Iran, with Israel and America, but even then we stand by Iran. Is that going to be so difficult for India?
I sorry to say, but I don't share the optimism of my fellow panelists. I don't think India has too much of a scope for being an honest broker when it comes to uh, working on a deal between US and Iran, or Israel and Iran. I think India burnt its bridges quite some time back. It was a matter of great surprise as to why they did it for them, but it was very clear from the time Mr. Trump came in. that he would do, Mr. Prime Minister would do practically whatever is told to him by them, and that is how it all played out. And it's very unlikely that there might be anything happening. Although we have tried to leverage our old contacts and try to see that the ships that have been locked up are allowed some kind of easy passage. But if you look at it in comparison, China is the only country whose ships are going up and down, primarily because China has a deal with Iran, signed in 2023, and that is what is allowing them to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Not no luck with India, although one I think Saudi Arabian ship has passed through this, but it has come on its own. But India is a tough position at the moment because they have been relying so much on the US and Israel. I think the salvation really lies with them. And if they want to get some kind of self sufficiency in energy self reliance, it has to come through the energy resources of the United States of America or whatever they can organize for them. Otherwise, it's not coming from Iran at least.
Coming to you, Dr. Pasha, that do you think that Iran will give an easy breather to India? Now, say, for example, so a lot of our tankers are still stuck in Strait of Hormuz. Now, maybe if I'm presuming that the last evening's call, which Prime Minister Modi made to President Pezeshkian, maybe on the basis of that call, maybe one or two tankers are allowed, but even then we do not know because there were stores-based stories being planted on the mainstream channels that look, Iran has given a pass to the Indian ships, and those kind of stories were planted. But then on the Iranian side, there was a condemnation of that, and they said that no, we haven't allowed any ship. But in this current circumstances, do you think that Iran can give an easy breather to India?
No, not immediately. You see, for the Iranians, their immediate priority is to get rid of the American bases and their financial and other interests so that they don't become a threat. Secondly, they are coping a very huge military threat. Although they appear to be doing reasonably well according to the most defense analysts. But if they insist on closing the Strait of Hormuz, you see the Americans and the Israelis are not going to surrender like what Trump wanted Iran to surrender, total surrender, and that we have decimated and broken the bones and so on, so which both were saying. The limited amount of assistance from Putin and China is not going to help all the way to save uh, Iran. So India is at the periphery. It is not so much of a priority. They may, because of some special reasons, they may allow the standard ships the Gulf, but it is not a priority for them. So we are thinking too great of ourselves. The Prime Minister, after a week or 12 days, has tweeted, which means nothing for the Iranians because there is no response from the Iranian president. It is an indirect tweet from the supreme leader. So, where is the response for a prime minister not to be responded? I think this shows the priorities and our own aggrandizement, self-aggrandizement, push-guru type of mentality. But in the short run, the damage, although I said, Sanjay said I am optimistic, but if you carefully see Sanjay, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not
I would rely
given
on
up.
your wisdom to
So
be happy about
there is the I said too little, too late. The damage
Yes.
control is being now realized because there is acute shortage of gas. People are on the roads for a cylinder, and they have to wait much longer, nearly a month. There is acute shortage of fertilizers. Sowing season is coming, and air links
Absolutely.
to the west and through the Gulf, that is
Yes.
snap, and our food supplies, whether it is fruits, vegetables, other essentials, which were going in millions of tons, they are stuck in containers. So there is this huge loss. This is just the beginning. And if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, you see, we are going to feel the pinch.
Absolutely.
We may try to get some oil from the Russians, but LPG from where? Uh, Not the
Yeah.
Russians so much as the easy accessibility. So
Yes.
eventually, Gulf is going to remain the lifeline for India's energy security and the economic development, which we have achieved remarkably well over a period of time. So all these is at stake. So we need to do uh, little more, or even more than that, to reassure Iran that look, we have close relations with Israel and America, but it is not at the cost of our bilateral relations with you. We want to revive the Chabahar if it is possible, or provide humanitarian assistance, and whatever little we can do, we should try to reassure them and then be part in their pain and agony. That doesn't seem to reflect in the PM's uh, tweet, and that is how the Iranians, in their hour of tragedy, if we don't be with them,
Right.
sympathize with them, and reassure them, it is
Hmm.
not going to repair after some time. So, in that
Right.
way, they are not going to give up their target of GCC states hosting American bases or Jordan, and they're not going to give up their support to Palestine or to their axis of resistance in Iraq and Hezbollah and Houthis. That will remain. America cannot do anything. Just 1 minute. So
Yes.
America cannot do anything much. They tried everything, but just give you one example. President Trump the other day, he said, if we want, we can knock off the Iranian electricity grid. You know what
Hmm.
Larijani said, now who is number two in Iran? He said we can knock out the electricity grid of all the GCC states and in the region. This is the kind of capability they have achieved. And there is talk of nuclear issue after some time if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. They will just say simply we will walk out of NPT and we will use the enriched uranium and clandestinely declare that we have become a nuclear power. So what can these two aggressors against Iran do? Because they have lost militarily and they are on the back foot.
Yeah.
So to
No, that's
retrieve,
an important point.
They are calling Putin and Egypt and Oman and
No, you made an
India,
important point. See,
perhaps.
you made an important point, and which comes to the conclusion of it that we do not know when this war will end, but surely Iran has established itself as one of the most powerful countries in the Middle East, and given that reality, Dakshin, and I'm asking you for the concluding comments, that do you think that India will have to somehow, I don't know how it's India is going to do, how it's going to demonstrate its actions that, it's very loyal to Iran as well, it's standing by Iran's side, but will India be forced to do that? Will India be forced to acknowledge Iran's dominance as this war is unfolding? And like what Professor Pasha explained through examples that electricity grid, as far as the military might is concerned, they've also shown that they are much dominant and they are capable of destroying and demolishing America in many ways. So, do you think that India, at the end of it, will be forced to acknowledge the dominance of Iran?
I
See,
just wanted to add one sentence. You
Very
see,
briefly, sir. Very briefly.
we have grossly underestimated Iran militarily, economically, diplomatically, in all sense because of the pressure and propaganda from Israel and America. Thank you.
Right. All right. All right. Okay, Dakshin. Yeah, go ahead,
no,
please.
no. Basically, India cannot afford to give up on its relationship with Iran because it's very important strategically. India-Iran relationship is benefits India as well as Iran. The Chabahar port is the only way by which India can successfully skirt Pakistan and reach the markets of Afghanistan, Iran, Central Asia, and all that. So it's a long-term thing. In fact, if you recollect, there was a plan at one point of time to have an oil pipeline that ran from India to Iran through Pakistan. Unfortunately, that did not, happen, and due to pressure from the US. So India and Iran, for whatever, I mean, no government in India can afford to take Iran for granted. So really, at the same time, India is not able to withstand the pressure from the United States, and particularly under the Trump administration. And it has gone very close to Israel because of the defense deals that that they have struck, and India depends now on Israel for its military weaponry and all that. So, point here is India is caught in a very in a very tough situation where it needs Iran. At the same time, it can't let go the US and Israel, because that would come with a whole lot of other consequences. So it is this kind of a tightrope walk which India has been doing for some time now, without taking a position on any major issue, unable to say anything substantial, and then constantly being seen to be shifting sides. So this continues. So it's in that sense, what will happen is India will lose the reliability of all the countries, both the US, Israel, and even Iran will come to the realization that they cannot rely on India if India is not able to take a firm position on issues. So this is eventually what is going to happen over the next few weeks, months, whenever after the conflict ends.
We'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. But yes, it is an opportune moment for India to recalibrate its ties. And given the kind of situations which are unfolding, can India really recalibrate, rebalance, and reset its ties with Iran? Because that is the need of the hour. We'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Pasha, Dakshin, Sanjay. Thank you very much.